Did you know that oil once traded below zero? Not cheap, not $1, below zero. During COVID, traders literally paid people to take oil contracts off their hands because the storage tanks were filling up so fast. And now, just a few years later, people are panicking over soaring gas prices. How does something swing from negative prices to inflation panic so quickly? The answer actually explains a huge amount about how the global economy works. But honestly, oil and gasoline pricing is one of the most misunderstood systems in the economy. Most people think gas prices are simply about whether America produces enough oil. But the reality is much more complicated. It involves global markets, shipping routes, refineries, psychology, and one of the most important concepts in economics. Prices are often set at the margin. And once you understand that idea, the entire market starts making a little more sense. The world uses roughly 100 million barrels of oil every single day. And unlike what people imagine, there is not some giant pool of instantly available gasoline just waiting to flood the market overnight. Yes, there are huge oil reserves underground, but crude oil still has to be drilled, transported, refined, and shipped before it ever becomes usable gasoline at your local station. And refining capacity itself is limited. That means even small disruptions matter. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Oil markets are usually very tightly balanced. So imagine the world needs 102 million barrels per day, and producers are supplying roughly 102 million barrels per day. Now, let's say traders suddenly fear war, sanctions, or shipping disruptions could threaten 2 million barrels a day. That's only about a 2% imbalance. It sounds tiny, but oil demand is relatively inelastic, meaning people can't dramatically reduce usage overnight just because prices rise. You still have to drive to work, planes still have to fly, trucks still have to deliver food. So even when supply looks even slightly threatened, buyers start aggressively competing for the next available barrels. And that's where prices spike because oil prices are often determined by the next needed barrel, not the average barrel. Think about concert tickets. If almost all the tickets are sold, those last few remaining tickets suddenly become extremely expensive. Oil markets work similarly. Tiny shortages at the edges create huge price swings. And that's why the Strait of Hormuz matters so much. This narrow shipping route between Iran and Oman handles roughly 20% of the world's oil shipments. About one out of every five globally traded barrels passes through that tiny little corridor. So, anytime tensions rise in the Middle East, markets react immediately. Not necessarily because supply has already disappeared, but because traders fear what could happen next. And oil markets react to fear before reality all the time. Here's another major misunderstanding. Crude oil sitting underground is useless to your car until refineries can actually turn it into gasoline, and refining itself can become a bottleneck. The United States hasn't built a major new refinery in decades. Refining is expensive, highly regulated, and regionally constrained. So when a refinery goes offline, even temporarily, it can significantly impact gasoline prices. That's also why California gas prices can sometimes run dramatically higher than the national average because of refinery constraints, fuel blend requirements, taxes, and pipeline limitations. So, even though America produces enormous amounts of oil, that alone does not guarantee cheap gasoline because oil is globally priced. Even though the US became one of the world's largest producers thanks to fracking and horizontal drilling, American oil still trades on the same global market. We are not isolated from world pricing. And this is why instability thousands of miles away can suddenly affect what you pay at the pump back home. Now, here's the fascinating psychological part. Most people do not follow bond markets or freight indexes, but almost everybody notices the giant glowing gas station signs several times a week. Gas prices become an emotional scoreboard for the economy. People associate them with inflation, politics, stress, and financial anxiety. And honestly, energy affects almost everything around us: shipping, food prices, airfare, manufacturing, agriculture, construction, packaging, you name it. Cheap energy quietly underpins huge parts of modern life. And that's the part we don't really talk about that much. Gas prices aren't just about driving. A small disruption on the other side of the world can eventually ripple through almost every part of our economy back home. That's it for this week. This is Jeannie, the 401k lady.